didn't echo chamber. This is Emma's like team spirit. We have Mark Howland back with us. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good. Welcome back. Mark, when we were planning these little interviews, you brought along one of your own ideas, which I was happy to see because it kind of saves me work. So we were talking about kind of AI mania is what I remember. And you told me about this case of, well, a bit of a game really that you played with a client to try and force them to take a bit of perspective. So I won't say any more, but I wondered if you could start with the game, please. What you were trying to do with this and the direction you were taking with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of AI hype, and lots of people are very excited about AI and doing AI, and many of those people are not in data roles, and I think that the trick is really to get someone to move out of solutioning into thinking about what's the actual commercial problem that they're looking to solve. How will their job or their life get better if they could have some information to help them do that? And it's almost irrespective of the solution. Don't jump to the solution being one algorithm or another algorithm. What's the commercial problem that you're looking to solve, rather than it must be generative AI or a large language model. There are some real world use cases where those things are adding commercial value. Chatbots, absolutely, that's a problem, but it's got perhaps a narrow set of use cases, perhaps around customer service applications. It's not a magical panacea to every single problem. So I think whilst there are lots of people excited about generative AI, I urge people in commercial roles to be excited about commercial problems, and then there can be some solutioning to solve those problems rather than just being excited about the next part of the hype cycle.
Well, tell us about the game, because the game is quite simple and it's a game people could theoretically play with themselves. So what was this case you mentioned to me with the client?
Yeah, I think if someone tells you they're really excited about AI, then I suppose you can ask them to reframe the problem, but they can't say AI. It's really simple. Then they have to be more excited around, well, my job would be a lot better if I could find 10% more customers, or if I could sell something and reduce my costs by 10%. And maybe AI is the solution to that problem, but getting someone to say this is my commercial problem rather than jumping straight to the solution being AI. And it might feel a little bit uncomfortable. There's been a lot of perhaps pressure on teams to say we're going to do AI, and without necessarily thinking about what's the underlying problem. Is it a box ticking exercise that you can go up the management chain and say we're now doing AI, or is it this is a commercial problem that aligns with the company's North Star, and if we do this, it will make us money or save us money.
You took this into a place of product market fit, is what you called it, and it's what caught my attention, because I would always associate that with, firstly, you always hear it in a startup context. So like product market fit is something you're doing when you've got an MVP, you're trying to figure out the position for it, or product managers when they're trying to launch something new or new propositions. But I was interested that you brought it up, given your background in data science. So I was wondering if you could kind of go through either just a list of points or a list of bullets, really, as to like when you're looking at projects. I've heard that you need the commercial lens, but what are some of those different questions that you're asking yourself when you're trying to look at some excitable PowerPoint, and you're asking, right, what do I need to do now, or what's my checklist that I need to go through so that I believe that this is a valid project to take and that we can develop it?
Yeah, I think this doesn't have to be massively long, complicated exercise to look at product market fit before you start to burn through lots of technical resource. But these are sometimes hard and difficult questions around who is the actual end user of your, be it software as a service or a data product or a BI tool. Who is the actual person who's going to use it at the end of the day, and what type of decision are they going to make from it? And is that something that they'll do, every 5 years, once a year, once a week? Because that then has some bearing on potentially how much money you can look to charge for it, and how that product will change their actions. I've seen quite a few companies spend money building user interfaces on top of data products in one BI tool or another tool, and then perhaps what they would have known from the outset was that the end user just wanted a CSV file once a day or once a week to load into their existing database or CRM system or modeling software, and the whole bunch of time that you'd spent building your user interface was for your vanity rather than it actually helping the end user do their job. So sometimes there can be a lot of time wasted on building UIs when the end user persona didn't want a UI. They just wanted a better column in their existing CRM system or another feature to use in their model. So that is something to be aware of not necessarily spending a whole bunch of time building a UI when you don't need a complicated UI. But then also thinking about whether you've got some differentiation from your competitors if you're going to build a new product. Is it a mature market with established pricing, established terms, or have you got something that is truly new and unique that you might be able to charge more money for? If you're, I suppose, coming to the market and there's a competitor there already, how are you going to win? Are you going to win on price? Are you going to win on service? If the market is already crowded, you're going to have to displace your competitor, and it might not necessarily be an easy thing to do if there's a lot of data engineering in place that would need to be unpicked. So are you going to grow the market? Are you going to steal, or are you going to, I suppose, drive the price down? And then realistically, what's your sales cycle? If you're selling into some industries, you might be able to get a sale away in a month or two if it's, I suppose, an agile industry and it might be something new and novel. But if you're selling into a highly regulated industry like a bank or an insurance company, those have long sales cycles with procurement and evaluation and testing. And if you think you're going to get sales away probably in the first year, then you're going to be quite naive, just because those businesses are highly regulated and very slow moving. And as well as understanding the end user, you need to think about who's going to be making the purchase decision, and you need to be able to tell a story to not just the end user, but to the person that's making that decision. And the types of information that you might present to the end user versus the person making the purchase decision might be quite different in terms of the quality of your product and how it would operate, and the granularity and the type of model performance statistics that a really granular end user might want versus someone who's I suppose going to sign the check and sign the contract with you. And these things don't have to take a huge amount of time, but sometimes they can be quite difficult conversations to have internally. And sometimes the brave decision might be, well, we're actually going to back off that idea that we thought was our winner, and we're going to do this idea instead, rather than spending a bunch of time on something that you might not really have the right to win. So whilst it can be great to just charge on, spending a couple of weeks on this market fit exercise is really valuable, because it can then give you a bit of a North Star around the development work that you need to do. And if someone's writing a story or a ticket, then there's some alignment around why I'm doing this, because this is the end goal and the output that I need to achieve from my market fit assessment exercise.
Good, Mark. Let me just pivot you a different direction slightly. Let's say this was an internal project. Let's say we're data scientists, so we don't necessarily have a sort of product that we might be bringing to market, but we're continually like building models and analytical output. And let's say that the buyer is, one of our stakeholders. I've got this perspective that a buyer that's spending money on something that might be a data product that's in the market, they may naturally be very knowledgeable about what they're trying to buy. Sometimes when it's in-house, data science is complex and it has patterns and predictions and these things. And sometimes the stakeholder is less, or the buyer, if you like, is sort of less knowledgeable. Could be someone who's responsible for customer management or marketer trying to do their campaigns or something. So what kind of product market fit tips would you give to like the data scientists of the world when they might be dealing with someone who is not an educated buyer and maybe nodding along, being like, "Oh my god, yeah, this sounds like rocket science. I'm just going to say, yeah, that's what I want." Those projects are probably destined to potentially end badly because the buyer can't demand anything or give it much input, and the data scientists could just disappear. But is there any kind of, I don't know, thoughts you have on that, or tips you'd have to what the data scientist can be thinking about just to make sure their projects are successful?
I think the temptation can sometimes be to build a very complicated solution that requires a lot of feature engineering, a lot of modeling, and that then will require a fair bit of attention and monitoring in production. And data scientists like doing that type of thing because it's a nice intellectual challenge. I suppose if it's an internal project, my steer would be start with a simple solution, almost the simplest solution that you can, that can get you some value straight out the door, rather than necessarily doing something that is overly complicated. And you could spend 3-4 times as long on it and get something that might be a little bit better, but it will require a whole lot more explanation and engineering effort, and then tuning day to day when it's I suppose doing the thing it needs to do. I think perhaps sometimes traditional rules-based models for your first crack at a problem might not actually be so much of a bad idea if you can turn something around in a week or two, and it doesn't require a complicated solution, just to test the water and see if it's working, to see if it's going to give your internal stakeholders some commercial value, before then spending a huge amount of time on building something more complicated. There's a lot to be said for a simple solution as your first approach, and then moving to something complicated if you need to. That way, I suppose a recurring theme is data teams justifying their value to the business. If you can get 3/4 of the way there in a couple of weeks, do that as your first stab, rather than spending a whole bunch of time on a more complicated solution that will then require a whole lot more monitoring and engineering resource in production. So start simple, particularly if it's a project for an internal stakeholder.
Mark, it sounds like we're aligned, which makes me very happy. Mark, we're done on time though, so thank you for joining us for this. And ladies and gents, this has been ML's Like Team Spirit.